You may be seated. Like the jury is now present in the courtroom. Mr. Roberts, you can call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. My next witness is already in the witness chair, and that is Paul Ferguson.
All right, Mr. Ferguson, can you please rise and raise your right hand as best you can? In this matter now pending, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
All right, you can put your hand down, grab a seat. Please state your name for the record, spelling your first name and last name.
Paul Ferguson, P-A-U-L-F-E-R-G-U-S-O-N.
Mr. Ferguson, you are testifying here today, and is it your understanding that you do have an agreement with the Muskegon County Prosecutor's Office in exchange for your testimony today against your mother, the defendant in this case, Shanda Van Dorher?
Yes, sir.
And is it your understanding that as part of that agreement, the people have agreed that none of your testimony today would be used against you should you exercise your right to have a trial in the pending criminal matter against you?
Yes, sir.
And you understand that your attorney that represents you in your pending criminal matter is present in the courtroom. That's Mr. Eldon Brady. And if at any time you need to ask him any questions or take a break, you just let us know, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, Mr. Ferguson, I'd like to start by just talking a little bit about your home in Norton Shores at the time that your brother passed away. And so you understand, and I'll try to make sure that I ask these questions very carefully because you haven't been present for this entire trial. You have a younger brother. We are not using your younger brother's name today, okay? So we're just going to use the initial G when we talk about your younger brother. So try to remember as best you can that if I ask a question that somehow involves your younger brother, that we're not going to say his name, okay? Can you do that?
Yes, sir.
All right. We'll try to ask those questions very carefully so that we don't get into that issue. But besides your younger brother, G, and yourself, at the time that your brother Timothy Ferguson passed away, who was living at the house in Norton Shores? Besides you and your younger brother, who else was living in the house?
My mother and my my little brother, though he was at my grandparents at the time, my step-grandparents.
And obviously your younger brother, if you can put it that way, but your youngest brother is the one that we're not identifying by name. He was living in the house at the time that your next youngest brother, Timothy Ferguson, passed away, correct?
Yes, sir.
And your mother was also living in that house as well?
Yes.
And is she in the courtroom right now?
Yes, sir.
As best you can you kind of point her out or maybe say what she's wearing right now?
Her hair is in 2 braids. She's got, I think that's a black sweatshirt.
I think that's sufficient for the record to reflect the witnesses identified the defendant, Your Honor.
Yeah, the record reflect that.
Now let's back up just a little bit from the time your brother Timothy actually passed away. When did Timothy come to live with you and your mother in that house?
May 27th of 2001.
2001. Was it maybe 2021?
21.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. So in May of 2021, Timothy came to live with you, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And at the time when Timothy came to live with you, besides yourself and G, was there somebody else that was living in the house during that time period?
Other than my mother and half-brother, my stepfather, Adam.
Okay. And your stepfather, Adam, was he married to your mother at that time?
Yes.
And is he actually the father of your younger brother, G?
No.
But your mother is the mother to you and to Timothy and to G, is that right? She's your mother, she's Timothy's mother, she's G's mother, is a better way to put it.
Yes.
Right? Yes. Okay. And at some point in time, did something happen to Adam where he wasn't living in the home anymore?
He suffered a stroke in January.
Did he leave the house at that point?
Yes.
When he left the house at that point, then when it became just you, your 2 brothers and your mother living in the home?
Yes, sir.
And when Adam suffered the stroke, was he physically able to do anything to provide any care to either you or to Timothy or to G?
No.
And where did Adam go when he left the house after the stroke?
After the hospital, he went to live with my step-grandparents, my in-laws, in their house in West Olive.
When did the stroke happen?
January.
And from the time the stroke happened, was he ever back in the home in any way?
No.
And the folks that he went to live with were his parents, is that right?
Yes.
And they live in West Olive, down in Ottawa County?
Yeah.
So those would be like your step-grandparents?
Yes.
And they'd be Timothy's step-grandparents as well, is that right?
Yes.
Now, in addition to your younger brothers that we've talked about, do you have any older siblings as well?
Yes.
Who are your older siblings?
My biological brother Nolan, stepsister Chelsea, stepbrother Chris. There's, I don't know exactly how to put it, step brother and sister, Kenzie and Xavier, I suppose would be the terminology.
But biologically speaking, you have an older brother, Nolan, is that
Yes.
correct? And Nolan is how much older than you?
2 years.
2 years older than you.
Yes.
And was there a time where he lived with you at the house in Norton Shores?
No.
Where does Nolan live?
North Carolina.
So Timothy came to live with you, and prior to Timothy coming to live with you, was it just you and G and your mom and stepdad in the house at that time?
Yes.
So you went from 4 people in the house to 5 people in the house in May of 2021.
Yes.
And then back down to 4 people when Adam unfortunately had his stroke in January of 2022.
Yes.
Now, around shortly after the time of the stroke, did there come a point in time where you became involved in having to administer some discipline to your younger brother, to Timothy?
Yes.
We'll talk about some specifics, but we've already had some text messages read, and you've had an opportunity to kind of hear about some of those text messages throughout this, right?
Yes, sir.
And you sent text messages back and forth between yourself and your mother. And we have those text messages from January through the time of your brother's death in July of 2022. Is that your understanding?
Yes, sir.
At some point in time in February, there's a discussion fairly early in those text messages about blocking Timothy's access to food. Can you describe what was happening at that time and how he was restricted from getting access to food?
He was sneaking food that was not necessary at that time, and it was solved by placing locks on the fridge, freezer, and pantry.
And when you say he was sneaking food that wasn't necessary, who would make that determination that it wasn't necessary?
Shonda.
And what type of food are we talking about that he would sneak that wasn't necessary?
Sweets or anything he could really get his hands on.
So as early as February, there was restriction, the locks were going on the freezer and the refrigerator, and you said there was also some type of lock on the pantry, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And we've heard a text exchange, but at some point a little bit later, as things are progressing into April, was there a time where Timothy was doing something to get the locks off of the pantry door?
He was pulling them off by hand.
And what were you instructed to do as a result of him pulling the pantry door locks off? Let me ask you this way: were you given some instruction to replace that lock?
Yes.
And who gave you that instruction?
Shonda.
And what was your understanding of why you were locking the pantry back up?
Because he was sneaking food.
Let's talk about your brother Timothy for just a little bit. Did Timothy have some special needs?
Yes.
What was your understanding of what his special needs were?
He was attention deficit hyperactive disorder, as well as autistic. He had speech and motor impairments.
Speech and what type of impairments?
Motor impairments, movement impairments.
Movement impairments?
Yes.
And at the time that he came to live with you, was he supposed to be taking some medication?
Yes.
And did he stop taking his medication?
Yes.
Why did he stop taking his medication?
Could you please reiterate?
Yeah, I guess the better way of saying it is, who made the decision for him to stop taking his medication?
Shonda.
far as you know, from the time that Timothy came to live with you in May of 2021 in Norton Shores to the time of his death, did you ever see Timothy go to a doctor?
No,
Did Timothy go to school?
not public, no.
How was he schooled?
Home.
When we say homeschool, what would that entail?
At first it was assignments on a tablet, and then my mother restricted it to where she would print out the assignments and he would sit downstairs and do them.
So he never went to school and never went to a doctor, as far as you could see.
Yes, sir.
Basically from January, from the time of the stroke moving forward, was Timothy allowed to even leave the house?
No.
When, if ever, was he ever allowed to go outside?
To walk the dogs sometimes?
And when he would walk the dogs, where was it that he would walk the dogs?
In the backyard, out of sight.
Was there ever some physical discipline that was involved with him being outside as well?
Yes.
What was that discipline?
He was made to run up and down the patio stairs.
And those are stairs in the back of your house?
Yes, sir.
Are those visible at all from the front of the house?
No, sir.
Visible to anyone walking by on the street or driving by, anything of that nature?
No, sir.
There are some text messages referenced in there where there's a discussion about doing the stairs chasing style. What is that, if you remember?
Following close behind him to ensure he moves faster.
And who would be the one that would chase him if that was taking place?
I had to.
What was, besides, you've talked about some of the special needs that Timothy had when he came to live with you. What was his overall physical appearance, though, when he first came to live with you?
He wasn't skinny, but he wasn't extremely overweight. He had a good amount of chubbiness to him.
So he was a little chubby?
Yes.
Obviously, as we all know, and now the jury's already seen some of the photographs, that went away at some point in time. When did the food restriction on Timothy start, with the locks going on the refrigerator and the freezer and the pantry and things of that nature? When did that actually begin?
Sometime in February.
There's been some testimony already about Timothy going on a hunger strike around the time of Adam's stroke. To your knowledge, did Timothy ever go on a hunger strike when Adam had his stroke?
No, sir.
There's also a reference to him going on another hunger strike about 2 weeks before he passed away. Excuse me, did that happen?
No, sir.
The police have indicated at the time they searched your residence, there were a number of cameras seized, as well as some other items. So let's talk about the cameras first. What was the purpose of the cameras being inside the residence?
To watch Timothy.
And who would be watching Timothy on those cameras?
My mother, or when she couldn't, she had me do so.
And how is it that you would, kind of explain for the jury if you can, how is it that you watched the cameras so you could watch what Timothy was doing?
I would log into the app on my phone, and it would alert me if there was a motion movement.
So you had you had your phone and you had some type of app on there that was connected to those cameras?
Several, yes.
And you said that you were also alerted to movement. Were there motion sensors in the home?
Yes, and the cameras also had that feature as well. They activated on motion.
And what was the restriction on Timothy's movement that would cause those cameras to go off? Where was he limited to?
Could you please reiterate?
Yeah. Where could Timothy go, basically?
Mainly he was restricted to the downstairs area, to a closet downstairs.
The downstairs area actually contained 2 bedrooms. One was yours and one was G's bedroom, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And there was also a bunk bed that was out in that area that I believe that the defendant indicated was Timothy's bunk bed, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Where did he actually sleep most nights?
In the closet.
What did you call the closet? Was there a name you used to refer to the closet?
The small room.
And what was in the small room, if Timothy was in the small room?
There was a camera monitoring him, even when he slept.
Was there an alarm on the door as well?
Yes, sir.
Some type of motion sensor or alarm?
Motion, vibration, yes.
So we have that on the door and then a camera actually inside the room as well, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And were there times where you were required to watch that camera?
Yes, sir.
And to your knowledge, were there times when your mother was watching that camera as well?
Yes, sir.
Was there a restriction on how much Timothy could move while he was inside that closet?
Could you please reiterate, sir?
Were there any restrictions on his movement inside the closet, or was it he could move around however he wanted inside the closet?
There were restrictions.
What were the restrictions on his movement?
Hands on his head, normally?
Hands on his head, is that what you indicated?
Yes.
Was that some form of discipline for him?
Yes. On his knees and against a corner or wall of the room.
And when you say hands on head, I'm going to demonstrate just putting my hands just over my head like this. Is that what he was required to do?
Yes.
He was required to be on his knees as well? Say yes?
Yes, sir.
You have to say yes or no, because this is
I
being
apologize.
recorded. You're fine, no, that's fine, everybody makes that mistake, it's not a problem. And was he monitored to make sure that he was doing those things?
Yes, sir.
And for how long would he have to do these things?
Several hours.
And that was inside his closet, for lack of a better way of putting it, what you referred to as the small room, correct?
Yes, sir.
Were there also times when he was required to stand against the wall?
Yes, sir.
And would that be in the closet, or would that be in other places in the house?
At times it would be upstairs by the back door or on the wall between me and G's room.
And when he would stand against the wall, how long were we talking about that he would be required to do that?
Hours, sometimes overnight.
At some point, did you utilize some type of alarm or alarms on his body to alert you if he was moving?
A vibration detector, yes.
Was there more than one that he was required to wear at times?
At times, yes.
Where were those devices located on his body?
They were normally tied to the back loop of his belt, or the back loop of his pants, I apologize.
And was there something placed on his wrist as well at any point?
Handcuffs, and before that, zip ties, zip cuffs,
When you say zip cuffs, are those put together with zip ties?
yes.
And those were designed to restrict what?
Movement,
Of what part of his body?
his hands,
I think there's a text exchange that the jury's heard a couple of times where it's referencing him tightening those zip cuffs on his wrist. Do you recall that?
yes, sir.
And so what was happening that caused you to send that text message and had that exchange with your mother about those zip cuffs?
He was complaining about them being too tight.
And what was your mother's response when he was complaining about those being too tight?
To leave them and she'd deal with it after she got home.
So the jury has some clarity in terms of a schedule here. You and your mother worked basically different shifts, for lack of a better way of putting it. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
What was your job at that time?
I worked as a dishwasher at Applebee's.
And was that, which Applebee's?
The one in Grand Haven right off the bridge.
What was your normal shift that you would work?
4 to close.
What, at that time, was your mother working as well?
Could you reiterate?
Did your mother have a job as well?
Yes.
Where was your mother working?
As a court scribe, I believe you would call it.
Okay, and where physically was that job?
That I remember of, did she say here at this courthouse?
So there was a time she worked at the Muskegon County Courthouse?
Yes,
Do you remember a time when she worked in a northern county at a courthouse as well?
I believe so, yes.
And what was her normal hours that she would work?
6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
So would it be fair to say that you two are not together in the house very often?
Yes.
So whose responsibility was it to keep an eye on Timothy if she was not in the house?
Mine.
And vice versa, like if you were not in the home, who would take the responsibility of watching Timothy at that point in time?
She would.
At the small room that you've described, at some point in time, there was a tarp placed in there, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And what was the reason there was a tarp placed in that room?
Due to Timothy's bladder problems, Shonda didn't want him urinating on the floor.
Would that be something that he would do?
Yes.
Did he wear some type of adult diaper?
Adult diaper, yes.
And let me ask it this way: if Timothy had to go to the bathroom, how would he go to the bathroom?
He would have to ask, and he would be timed.
And who would do the timing?
Whichever one of us was there.
So he'd ask, basically has to ask permission to go to the bathroom.
Yes, sir.
And what time was he allowed to go to the bathroom?
For urinating, it was a minute. For
You can say the word, it's okay.
taking a poop, it was 2 minutes.
And who set those time limits?
Shonda.